There we go. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Warlord Magni, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for letting me commandeer your park day to teach this class. This is our single sword basics class, a part of my Warlord Noob to Warlord series. And so with this class, you should be able to do the basics and reasonably well at single sword. So we're going to cover all the foundations. So starting with your stance, then going to your guard, talking about blocks, shots, as well as some movements, and then some starting combinations that you can use in single sword practice. All right, so first off, starting with your stance, this is where everything works, right? Your feet are your foundation. If you're not good at your foundation, everything else is going to fall over. So with your stance, you first point. I always have my front foot pointed forward, and then my back foot is perpendicular to my body. I have a slight bend in my knees. I know it's kind of hard to see with my knee pads, but slight bend in my knees. My waist, or the center of mass, is between, right in the middle of my two legs. And then I'll hunch down a little bit. So this is our starting stance. So if you need to move forward or backwards, you just step forward. Again, front foot always going forward, and then you bring your back foot in. If you need to go backwards, you do the same thing, but reverse. Now, if you want to go side to side, if I want to move right, I move my right foot first, and then my left foot, right? And then now if I want to go this way, I do the reverse. This is all fundamental day one stuff. If you're left-handed, you do the same thing, but now you're flipped, okay? So now my left foot is pointed forward, my back foot is back perpendicular, everything is the same. Important in single sword, your shoulders should be canted a little bit back, because if you have a squared cross section, there's now more of me to hit. So that just makes your opponent have more juicy kill shots. So have more of a streamlined, you don't have to be like this whole fencer style, but I have a slight angle in my stance. Okay, so now with our guard, starting with our guard, a standard guard is you have your sword canted a little bit at an angle. My wrist is torqued a little bit, so I'm protecting my forearm, and then my elbow is tucked in, and I place it a little bit into my body. So, Giovanni, come here. Because if Giovanni throws a strike here, all of that force is being put into my elbow, and I block it this way. So I don't have to really brace a lot. Whereas if I'm out here, now I have room, or there's all of this blow that can, or reflex that can happen. It's just a stronger stance this way. So this is your standard single sword stance. Additionally, you can do a cross stance. This is the stance that I typically do. So I'm like this. My arm is a little bit bent, but everything, my wrist is still torqued, but I just have it here at mid-chest level. The difference between this stance and this guard, the standard guard and the cross guard, is it changes the shots that you have available to you. Also, there's this concept called lanes. I'm not going to cover it too much here, but pretty much it's where you can throw. There's the outside lane, right? And then there's the inside lane, to where I can get on the inside of my opponent's sword. If you're in a standard guard, you have direct lanes. But if you have a cross guard, the lanes are now shut off, and then you force your opponent to throw above or below your sword. So it changes the dynamic of the fight. If you want to know more about this, check out my combat theory video. Okay, so that's the standard and the cross guard. There's also the inverted guard. And so standard guard, but now I'm flipped. And so this is kind of goofy. Sorry, that was a cicada. So this is kind of goofy, where my arm is canted, my wrist is straight. I'm not like torqued out like this. It's straight, slight bend in my elbow. This is kind of wonky and something that you don't see very often. And people are often confused on what to do. One of the nice things about this is you're baiting your elbow. So a lot of people try to throw that elbow. You often have this block, but now I can flick real easily. Also with this guard, I can just easily stab. I'm already loaded up. I don't even have to do anything. I just have to step in. Or my opponent can step in and kebab themselves. Just be careful, or like when you do this inverted guard, there's a lot of like tension in your shoulder, so just be careful, like don't hurt yourself. Practice around with the different guards. Some work for others better than the other ones. So just like feel it out, figure out what you like. So now with the blocks, this is the standard house method, right? So if we're in standard guard, I'm going to use standard guard because it's standard and conventional. But our house method, right? So you have the wall, the roof, and then the other roof. So really, you just have to block right here. You make this arc, and you can block almost every shot. For the most part, if somebody's like throwing for your hip, you have to now bend a little bit and drop and make a deeper wall, okay? When you're throwing blocks, be careful of windshield wiping, and that's when you go like this, and that kind of puts you in a bad position, and it's really easy to get killed because you're throwing these really unwieldy blocks, and so it takes a lot of time to get to the other side. Okay. Additionally, with blocks in single sword, it's really important, and I think this is a concept that newer fighters don't get so well, and that's you have a 1-point shield. It's your offhand, right? So if Giovanni and I are fighting, I'm going to throw a high cross. So if I throw a high cross, it opens up this part, but I can block, and then I take an arm, but I take now Gavano's off arm, or sword arm, and then I can follow up with another shot, right? So I trade an arm for a kill, or, you know, I can maybe get the shoulder and still only lose an arm, all right? So just be conscientious. Go to like my combat theory video again. When you're throwing shots with single sword, it's really important to know what parts of your body you're exposing. And so that's the most likely case or place that you need to throw your offhand, okay? All right, so now talking about blocks, what about the shots? What are the primary shots that we throw? So the easiest shots are all gonna depend on your guard. So the standard guard, a lot of people like to throw the straight chop or the cross, okay? Additionally, another easy shot, especially if your opponent is in standard guard, is you throw just a straight chop onto their opposite shoulder. This can be sometimes hard to do depending on the range, especially if they're canted back really far. It's really hard to get. But if somebody like squares up to you, they're like giving it to you for free. So a free meal is always great. Additionally, okay, so from another guard, the cross guard, you have quite a few options as well. So again, you're pretty much all your shots are going to come straight from here. I'm already loaded, so I can just throw out and go underneath. Additionally, you can do a lot of scoops or hip shots from here. So I just drop and I throw, and all I'm doing is I'm bending at the knees. Boom. Additionally, with the cross guard, here, let's step up over here. With the cross guard, go into a standard guard. One thing that you can do is a stab is really nice to do here, because all I have to do is I have to go around the guard, and then I can stab straight in. And you're pretty much loaded for that right away. What else? All right. So there's the chops. You can also torque over and do this flat wrap over, or you can do a full wrap and get around. Pretty much all the shots from the standard and the cross guard are all the same. You're just having to devote a little bit more movement to one rather than the other. And like when I fight single sword, I'm often transitioning from this cross guard to the standard guard, depending on what my opponent is doing. Lastly, there's the inverted guard. I kind of covered this a little bit already. This flick for the elbow, let's flip sides. This flick for the elbow is super easy to do. And all I'm doing is I'm dropping my elbow down. I'm just doing this. Okay? When you do this, don't torque your wrist. That's how you hurt your wrist. Don't do that. So I'm just rotating like my shoulder to get my elbow to go from top to bottom. So it's just this rotation. Everything else is rigid. Okay? With that, so you can do this flick, but I can also go for the other shoulder or this shoulder of now I go, instead of like this, I come in and then I wrap the shoulder. So to show from the other side, if I want to go for that shoulder, it's the same motion. I'm here, boom, same thing. One of the cons of this guard, though, in terms of shots and blocking, is if your opponent hits the end of your sword, you have like no resistance, so it's really hard to get to recover from that. So just be conscientious. Okay, so the other thing with shots that I want to talk about, going back to the standard guard, people I think in single sword don't throw at the hips enough. This is like a real juicy, clean kill. So if I want to flip this side. So from the standard guard, to get a hip scoop, I just need to go down, under the pommel, and then up, and throw. You can even throw it flat if they're up a little bit more. You don't even have to do the upward motion. You can just throw up, like that. Again, like if I have an inverted guard, I'm set up, and I just have to extend my arm out. For the other side, for the offhand side, same thing, but now I need to like step in and do that flat wrap. Okay. Lastly, with shots in single sword, stabs. Stabs are great. Like Florentine, stabs are everything. Single sword is a lot like Florentine, but you now just don't have another sword. Okay? So there's all of this surface area that I can stab in, I can stab over, I can go low and stab, I can come in and stab. There's a lot of juicy area that you can get a stab off. So use them. So yeah. Now with the movement, I already kind of covered these, but now integrating your movement with your shots is really powerful, and using range. So I have a whole video devoted to range and range control as well as movement. It's a much deeper topic. It's like a half hour. Check that out. But very briefly, so for range in single sword, it's a lot about being able to either snipe your opponent's offhand, or switch my sides, my opponent's sword arm, or getting them to move their sword arm out of the way so I can get a killing blow. All right, so you have to use your range. So range has 3 different areas. You have A, B, and C. So C range is out here. Giovanno and I, we can't touch each other at all. B range is at the start that I can touch Giovanno's torso, but realize that I'm already in range for their arm. I also realize my arms are longer and my sword is longer than Giovanno's, so my B range, the start of my B range is not the start of Giovanno's B range. So just be conscientious of that. I mean, yeah, if you like extend. but that's just like a simple case. All right, so now B range starts at the tut, the very tip of your sword, to about the top like 6 to 8 inches, and then everything beyond that is A range. In single sword, you typically don't fight A range because you don't have a lot of protection. So it's really easy to like die in A range. Whereas if you fight in like single sword or a sword and board, you have a whole like board to protect you and provide coverage. Whereas here, if we're here, like it just takes one kill or one shot to die. Okay, but going back to range control and your movement, a lot of single sword is all about arm snipes. Okay, so if we're out here, I can step, very slight step, and get an arm snipe. Now Giovanni has to switch, and in that switch time, I have all the control. Or what I can do is I can throw, either hit Giovanni's sword, that is technically a killing blow in amp guard, or I can hit the same arm, so on and so forth. The double tap is really powerful here. All right. Also with range control as well, or using your range in single sword, instead of just doing the arm snipes, you can do bigger movements to get, to get access to the shoulders as well as the mid torso and the hips as well. One shot that I really like to do is I'll take an offline step. So I'm moving laterally to my right. And so typically what happens is my opponent's guard will shift in my direction, and then I can scoot underneath the guard and get a hip shot. Additionally, while I'm doing it, switch me sides. If they don't bring their guard over, I can still now, I'm blocking myself, and I can now get this hip. Hips are juicy. Get them. All right, so now with movement, blocks, shots covered, I'm going to walk you through a couple combos, and then we'll talk about drills, and that'll be the rest of the class. So for combos, I've kind of already hinted to some of these things. For single sword, the first thing, first and foremost, double tap, super powerful, especially if you get the arm snipe on your opponent's sword arm, because now you have all the control and you have right away. They have to switch hands before they can do anything else. Okay? And so double tap can be boom, or like, don't switch. I can go boom, boom. I can throw, switch me sides, sorry. I can throw at the sword arm and then throw on the other side. I can throw at the same sword arm twice. I can throw arm, leg, right? You're just throwing 2 shots in rapid succession, and it can be anywhere. All right? Very rarely, I don't really recommend throwing at legs, because when you throw at a leg, I'm now poised down, and it exposes my shoulder and my back, right? So if I'm here, I'm like really countered. So yeah, just be conscientious. The only time that I would really throw a leg shot in single sword is if like my opponent comes in, I can throw and then backstep out at the same time. All right. Okay, so additionally, there's in the double tap, I've talked about in my combat theory video, cross-sectant combos. So very briefly, you can divide the torso in 6 different locations. My hip, my mid-chest, my shoulders. This is all on one side, and then you do the same thing on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so the cross-sectant theory for combinations is you throw X's, or a cross-sectant, right? So I throw out this hip, and then throw out that hip, or this hip, or this hip, this shoulder. I know body parts. Or you can work on either side, so working on this shoulder, then working on this shoulder. And so the basic idea of that is if I throw at Giovanni's hip back here, I throw down, Giovanni will devote that block, but now exposes his shoulder. Boom. Right? So the entire idea is that you're getting your opponent to move their guard out of the way. Same thing if you go from side to side. If I throw out here, I get Giovanni to move their guard over, I expose their arm, and throw. Okay? So you can do all the different combinations and make your own combos as you go. Again, like figure out what works for you, and that's kind of like how you build your own style. Everything that I say isn't going to work for everything for each one of you here today. Another combination, this is honestly my favorite combination in single sword. It's kind of a double tap, but with extra steps. So we're here in standard guard. I throw a wrap, or this flat wrap, just down, and then I come over and I do a wrap again. So that's the second shot. I can then cross, and then I can stab. And you don't have to do all 4 shots. You can just boom, boom, or boom, 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 right? Integrating movement with this as well. So boom, boom, boom. Or, you know, if you get your opponent calibrated to that, I'll throw, and then instead, like, I'll initiate the combo, get them to think more shots are going to come on this side, and then I open them up on the other side. Okay? Let's see. That's a butterfly. There's also the offline stab. I think this is a super beautiful, it's not really a combo, but a setup where all I'm doing is I'm stepping over outside of their guard. So if you square up like this way, right? So Giovanni are squared up. We have this box between us. If I step over my sword, I'm not moving my sword. My body is moving. So when I move like this, my body is now, or my sword, the tip of my sword is not in the plane of Giovanni's guard. So all I have to do is just this very small stab. Okay? Again, you don't always have to stab. With that, you can do this offline step and slash, wrap, hip scoop. Doing an offline step in single sword is really, really powerful. Also, it doesn't always have to be to the right. I can do the left and get access to that arm, or I can step over like this. Boom. Or over. Boom. Offline steps, really great. Do it. It's a good time. Okay, last combo. This is really a riposte or a counter in single sword. This is kind of in the frame of like block strike, where your opponent throws a shot, you block it, and then you return to whatever they are exposing. So if Giovanni throws a high cross, I block, and then I counter, right? I can counter up, or I can counter down. If Giovanni throws on this side, this is a really bad place for Giovanni to be, because I have full real estate on their body. Boom, boom, right? So thinking about countering, not just blocking, but returning off of your opponent's momentum to provide you additional power and energy to get to them faster. Okay? So those are the combos. So now, lastly, talking about drills. I think for single sword, it's really important to reset to your guard. A lot of people, when they start, they chicken wing real bad. So get started in your guard, throw a shot, and go back to guard. And whether it's your standard guard, the cross guard, inverted guard, whichever one you want to do, and you don't even have to do this with a person or with a pel, like just doing this, right? All I'm doing is I'm resetting to guard. Or if I'm in standard guard, throw a chop, reset, straight chop, reset, straight chop, reset. Just practicing that and making sure and being very conscientious of where like the rest of your body is and where your elbow is. Because if Like what I see with a lot of people is, okay, they'll start out in a good guard, they'll throw a couple shots, and then they're like this. And so now it's really easy for Giovanni to just snipe my elbow, and now I have to switch, and I'm off-handed now. Okay, integrating movement with attacks. And so this can be a very simple drill where you're just set up, right? And I can take a linear motion, and I can throw, or I can take a lateral step and throw, and you can do any of the sectants, right? So just practice that out. Also, on the defensive side, throwing a shot as you're backing up. So throwing out and moving to throw a shot so your opponent doesn't keep aggressing you. Practicing lateral movements, I think, especially with new fighters, they tend to move in a straight line. And as I've pointed out earlier, stepping offline, stepping laterally, gives you more to see on your opponent, especially in single sword. So just working, going in this sort of circle of like take 5 steps one way, 5 steps the other way, right? And just doing that back and forth and building that muscle memory in your legs so you don't have to think about it when you're fighting is really, really powerful. And then lastly, actually doing Pell combos, doing, I forget the name of the combo I was told, or the Pell technique, the official name, I don't remember it anymore, but you break the body into the sectants and you do a 2-tap. So you start, just drop. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you start in guard, 1, 2, 1, or 1, 1, sorry, 1, 2, 1, 3, do that all the way around. Once you get to 6, 6, you go 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And you go all the way to 6, 6. I like to do it hardcore mode, where if you mess up, you reset. And then you do it for your right hand, you do it for your left hand. If you want to be additional, like add an additional level of complexity, you can add movement into that. So now, you know, first shot, I'll throw, drop the guard. First shot, I'll throw stagnant, and then second shot, I'll throw moving. And you can do that, you know, to the right, to the left, moving linear forward, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different ways that you can do drills and practice many of these concepts that I've shown today. But that's all I have, and I appreciate all of your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you on the next installment of my Newb to Warlord series. Thanks.